trying to find a job that's suitable for me and for my 2 kids, my husband, and our home to put food
Worried
on the
about
table.
losing my family. A lot of people lose their family when they lose their money.
It just seems like everything is more burdensome.
Our income isn't increasing, so you're spending more and more and more.
Food on the table.
Scary.
2008 has indeed been a tumultuous financial year. And while the presidential election has not yet occurred, the economy has become the nation's top problem, and there's no question that it will be the most significant factor in the decision on who is elected our next president. For years, Gallup has been asking Americans an underlying question: how would you rate economic conditions in this country today? Excellent, good, only fair, or poor? With home foreclosures, record high gas prices, staggering unemployment, and a credit crisis on Wall Street, an increasing number of Americans have rated the economy as poor as the year 2008 has progressed. Even as early as January, Americans were not feeling too optimistic about the U.S. economy.
Cut down my spending, you can't really buy things for yourself or your family, whatever.
And people not being able to maintain their homes or pay their rent or buy food, those certainly, and people getting laid off every day.
Gallup poll conducted January 2 to 4, 2008, only 24% rated the economy as poor. The federal government took 2 important steps in an attempt to jumpstart the economy. First, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by 0.5 percentage point to 3.5%. That was the biggest interest cut in 25 years. Then on January 28th, the Economic Stimulus Act of 2008 was introduced in the House of Representatives as a measure to inject money into a flagging economy.
More than 100 million families squeezed by the high cost of basic living expenses will get a meaningful tax rebate, and it is targeted to those families most in need.
As a Gallup poll conducted January 28 to 30 indicated that 30% of Americans were rating the economy as poor. Just after that poll was conducted, the U.S. Federal Reserve, for the second time in 9 days, cut interest rates once again. Yet these cuts by the Federal Reserve were not having much of an effect amid fears that the worst U.S. housing slump in 25 years was crippling the wider economy. February 13th, the Economic Stimulus Act, which would guarantee tax refunds for millions of Americans, was signed into law by President Bush. But was it enough to help turn the economy around? A Gallup poll conducted February 12 to 14 saw very little change in how Americans rated the economy. 32% rated the economy as poor. Meanwhile, gas prices continue to rise, hitting $102 a barrel at the end of the month. And by that time, in a Gallup poll conducted at the end of February, 38% of Americans rated the economy as poor. On the morning of March 14th, the country was stunned upon hearing the news that Bear Stearns, one of the largest global investment banks and securities trading and investment firms, was on the verge of collapse. 2 days later, J.P. Morgan moved to buy Bear Stearns at a cut-rate price of $2 per share. The reality that such a large institution as Bear Stearns was becoming a victim of the crumbling economy was clearly on the minds of Americans. A March 14th to 16th Gallup poll showed that 42% rated the economy as poor. The pain was not just being felt on Wall Street, but on Main Street as well. In April, Americans quickly saw their stimulus check evaporate at both the grocery store and the gas station, as food prices jumped dramatically from a year ago and retail gas prices reached a national average of $3.51 a gallon. More than a month later, what many considered the unthinkable just a year ago actually happened. Retail gas prices hit a record $4 a gallon. And within the same week, the nation saw the biggest jump in inflation in 6 months, and thereafter, in a Gallup poll conducted June 9 to 12, 49% of Americans rated the economy as poor. Back on Wall Street, the credit crisis took its toll on 2 more banking institutions. On July 8th, it was reported that the federal government might place Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac under conservatorship. By the end of July, President Bush signed into law H.R. 3221. That was a massive housing aid bill to rescue Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. With more than 400,000 struggling homeowners standing to benefit, 46%, slightly less than the month before, rated the economy as poor in a July 30, August 1 Gallup poll. But by September, a darker cloud was hanging over the economy. Lehman Brothers, burdened by $60 billion in soured real estate holdings, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after attempts to rescue the 158-year-old firm failed. This was the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. A day later, Bank of America announced it would acquire Merrill Lynch in an all-out stock transaction. It didn't end there. On September 16th, the U.S. government announced an $85 billion emergency loan to rescue AIG. With the financial markets already fragile, the government warned that a failure of AIG could be catastrophic. In a September 16th to 18th Gallup poll, 50% rated the U.S. economy as poor. On September 19th, Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson proposed spending $700 billion of taxpayer money to purchase troubled mortgage-backed securities from financial firms and to attempt to contain the crisis.
It's hard work. Our proposal is a big proposal. And the reason it's big and substantial is because we got a big problem.
With Bush's job approval rating down to 27%, it was apparent that the public was not happy with the president's handling of the financial crisis. After days of intense negotiations, the bill went to the House only to be rejected.
I think that we need to renew our efforts to find a solution that Congress can support.
We extend a hand of cooperation to the White House, to the Republicans, so that we can get this issue resolved.
U.S. stock markets crashed, eventually ending down more than 777 points.
The motion is adopted.
But after revisions to the language, the Senate passed a newly revised version of the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008. With an additional $150 billion, the bill was sent to the House for consideration, and on October 3rd, the House passed the bill. President Bush signed the bill into law.
I personally think it was a bad idea, and I think that we should fix responsibility where it rests.
For us private citizens, nobody's bailing us out, nobody's helping us.
The public was clearly not happy about using taxpayer money to bail out Wall Street. That was clearly reflected in an October 3 to 5 Gallup poll in which 56% of Americans rated the economy as poor. So, where does the economy go from here? Now, most recently comes an official report from the government that the U.S. economy is actually shrinking. And that comes at a time when in our latest polling, the percent of Americans who say the economy is poor is approaching 60%. With the presidential election coming right around the corner, it's apparent that as the most important problem facing the country today, according to the American public, the economy will be weighing very much on the minds of American voters as they go to the polls on November the 4th. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Editor-in-Chief of the Gallup Poll.